She has spoken since the very first one. She always comes up with a new, engaging topic. I don't know what we would do without Sharon. She's like a pillar of our event. She's been our keynote. She's a great supporter. She helps us in many, many ways. And she's going to be talking today about defending women from gender ideology. I just said Sharon Barnes is a great woman.
I'm so happy to have that introduction. I didn't know who you were talking about there for a minute. Very, very honored and happy to be back here again. And I wasn't here the very first one, and I haven't been the keynote speaker, but I have been here for 25 years. Probably longer than most of you have been alive. That's okay. No, that's really, I'm not offended. So I want to start with UT's former land acknowledgement. And you can read it along with me. The University of Toledo acknowledges that the region of Ohio in which the university sits is the ancestral homelands of the Seneca, Erie, and Odawa, as well as places of trade for indigenous peoples, including the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Killatika, Lenape, Kaskaskia, Kickapoo, Miami, Muncie, Peoria, Piankashaw, Shawnee, Wea, and Wyandotte. As a steward of public lands, it is our responsibility to understand the history of the land, the peoples who came before us, and their continuing ties to this place. We thank them for their strength and resilience in protecting this land and aspire to uphold our responsibilities according to their example. Our diversity is our strength was added by me. When I went to find the land acknowledgement on UT's website a couple days ago, I could not find it. As a consequence of Senate Bill 1, universities all over the entire state have been removing their land acknowledgements from their websites. When I walked to class, the first day of classes earlier this semester, I noticed that our wall of inclusive excellence had been removed from University Hall's third floor. People who celebrate diversity, people whose crime was to celebrate diversity, have been removed from our public landscape. So when we think about, first of all, what we owe the indigenous people whose lands we are on, we also have to think about what we owe each other. Removing us from public spaces does not remove our responsibility to know where we are, how we got here, and what our responsibilities are to the land and to our own history. We can be erased from some places, but it does not erase our responsibility. So thank you for that. Now I have a couple of other thank yous. First of all, of course, the organizers, Dr. Kilmer and the rest of the Wild crew who believes in freedom to read so strongly, thank you for inviting me back. And I also want to thank the Department of Women's and Gender Studies who have encouraged me to participate in this event for many years. The students, the faculty, the staff. Senate Bill 1 eliminated our bachelor's degree. It did not eliminate our fighting spirit. And it did not eliminate our ability to critically think. And it didn't eliminate our 2 minors. So if you're interested in women's studies, check them out. The thing that I want to talk about today, banning gender ideology. I should have put woke gender ideology. I can't remember now why I decided not to. So that's my primary goal, but I also always at this talk a little bit about what we mean when we say banning books. So I want to start with a quote from PEN America, who did a report this year, The Normalization of Book Banning. And PEN America is a group, like a subsidiary of an international group of writers who does a lot of support for writers, basically. But they, in the last 5 years, have gotten really interested in the issue of censorship. So they, in addition to the American Library Association that puts on this event all over the country, PEN America has gotten very interested in the last year. So I put a couple highlights, but I just want to read a bit from the introduction of this report. In 2025, book censorship in the United States is rampant and common. Never before in the life of any living American have so many books been systematically removed from school libraries across the country. Never before have so many states passed laws or regulations to facilitate the banning of books, including bans on specific titles statewide. Never before have so many politicians sought to bully school leaders into censoring according to their ideological preferences, even threatening public funding to exact compliance. Never before has access to so many stories been stolen from so many children. The book bans that have accumulated in the past 4 years are unprecedented and undeniable. This report offers a window into the complex and extensive climate of censorship between July 1, 2024 through June 30, 2025. Our reporting on book bans remains a bellwether of a larger campaign to restrict and control education and public narratives, wreaking havoc on our public schools and on democracy. So this is the part of the talk, those of you who've heard me talk before, this is the one I always do. And I did only change the slide a little bit. What do we mean when we say a book is banned? There's sort of two elements to it. One is called a challenge, and the other part is the banning. So a challenge is a formal complaint about a material in a library with a request that it be restricted or removed. So the challenges, of course, occur way more often than the actual removal, which would be the banning. Sometimes I think it's still counted as a ban. The material is restricted, like it'll be put behind the circulation desk and you have to request it if it's been challenged. So there are a lot more challenges than there are actual removals. This year, there were 821 challenges, which was down a little bit from last year. There were over 1,000 last year. 4,000 unique titles were challenged. What's fascinating about this year is who's doing the challenging. So to finish these numbers, overwhelmingly where books are challenged is public libraries, 55%. 36%, 38% are school libraries. The rest would be other kinds of libraries or classrooms, like individual classrooms where they would try to remove access to a book in a classroom. 70% of what is challenged is books. Other kinds of things that get challenged would be displays, events. Probably 10 years ago or so, drag queen story hours became very popular, and those got challenged a lot by patrons who thought they were inappropriate. And in terms of the who and why, this year, and this is what I would say is the most significant new trend in book challenges, is that it's partisan pressure groups who are doing the challenges. And I have a slide to sort of compare this to previous eras. And why 44% of the materials challenged had LGBTQ content in them. And to make it clear that there's a link between our study of gender and our study of LGBTQ issues, those may seem separate. Woke gender ideology is the tag phrase for targeting trans people, targeting trans issues. And so as a good feminist who is interested in liberation of all people, all marginalized people, we have an interest, a gender interest, obviously, in challenging gender stereotypes and norms, but we also have a human rights interest in saying all people have a right to exist. So the numbers that you're looking at are significantly higher than in previous eras. Usually in an average year, the number of books banned would be around 246 nationwide. So you see we're unfortunately doing a lot better than that. And this is the the ALA, American Library Association's slide around who's doing the challenging of books. So 26% would be pressure groups, 36% would be school boards or administrations, 10% elected officials. And so this is how they get to that 72%, and only 16% would be parents. Just to contrast, I pulled this off of an old presentation I had done here years ago. Look at the graph for the number of challenges by parents. So historically, it was parents doing this challenging. And what would happen is a book would be removed from one location. So it's not that graphic of a pile of books on fire. It is, this individual title is restricted in this library. Unfortunately, with the organized targeting of texts, there are a couple of websites where they actually show people how to campaign against books, and then they put a list of LGBTQ or feminist material, and the people can challenge all those books at once. And so this is a coordinated effort. I modified this slide a little bit. I should have took their name off because this was last year's slide. Last year, 47% of the material was LGBTQ. This year, it's 44. So I just updated it. PEN America analyzes the traditions, the trends, and so their number one item that they identified was it is the federal government being involved in book banning. The second significant element is that they link or conflate LGBTQ identity issues in books with sexually explicit material. That's the same thing. And of course that limits the content of LGBTQ material. And they also highlight in their report that there's been a lot of anticipatory compliance. So I want to go back to that land acknowledgement for a moment. When we're sitting in a current moment where Black and brown people's lives are being not taken seriously, and we're targeting immigrants with masked ICE agents in the middle of the night, we have a problem with anticipatory compliance. Taking our land acknowledgement down before someone asks us to do it is an ethical error. I'll just say that. They also talk about the impact of book banning and censorship. The messaging to the people whose lives are being erased, whose experiences are being erased, is that you don't matter and you don't belong here. And that has a significant negative impact. They also end their report with a really hopeful idea about how many people are resisting. I'm happy to know that UT's banned books as celebration is one of the best in the country, but I'm not surprised. But this happens everywhere. One of the interesting things that I've learned from doing this for many years is that where a book is removed, oftentimes a community response will be to contact the author, have the author come and do a talk. Somebody buys a bunch of books and donates them to the public library, or so that students can get access elsewhere. And so lots of people hear about the book, people want to read it, they want to talk about it. So we are a country that values our freedom of speech and our right to read pretty seriously. So the pushback on this, I hope, is bipartisan and I hope is passionate, because it absolutely is an issue for all of us here. So I want to talk about gender a little bit in terms of the effect of the current administration's attitude about sex and gender. Primarily, they don't think there's a difference between biological sex and gender. And so part of our larger context is the overturning of Roe versus Wade, right? The idea that a right that women have to control our bodies has been taken away by the Supreme Court in the Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health case in 2022. But Executive Order 14168, which the President released last year, defending women from gender ideology extremism and restoring biological truth to the federal government, declares that Sex and gender are the same thing, and there are only two. Eliminating intersexual people completely, and as you know from all the other laws that have happened, attacking trans people's rights to define their gender however they want. And frankly, all of our right to define, there isn't, however many people are here, that's how many genders there are here, right? There are not just two genders. That focus on so-called gender ideology, it is really targeting trans people, but the implications, not that that's not serious, that's absolutely serious, but the implications go well beyond that to the rest of us. And so I think this is another space where we are all implicated in what our government is doing, even if that doesn't apply to you, you'll think it applies to you personally. Recently, just in the past 2 weeks, the White House released a compact with higher education saying we'll give you preferential treatment for government funding if you cooperate with the Trump administration. Part of what cooperate with the Trump administration means accept and profess that there are only two genders, and that equals biology. This week, the Supreme Court is hearing a case to make it illegal to reinstate the opportunity to perform conversion therapy on LGBTQ people, which has been made illegal in many states because it is ineffective and harmful to LGBTQ people. And they're hearing that case now. And then just a few weeks ago, the military physical training standards, I think it's Department of War now, I want to make sure I get that right, Hegseth said that we were going to abide by the highest male standards of physical fitness. And there was a huge write-up in the New York Times about how women in special forces have never had different standards than men who participated in special forces. And so the idea, again, privileging certain groups of people, targeting other groups of people, and then having the audacity to act like you're defending us by creating these barriers to our success is particularly offensive. I had a couple more slides, but it looks like I'm just about out of time. These are some of the other contexts. The military has also banned over 600 novels in their libraries, including Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, some of the other folks. This is absolutely connected to the attacks on critical race theory that have happened around the country. 249 local, state, and federal government entities have introduced 870 anti-critical race theory laws. Again, banning us from talking about these issues does not relieve our responsibility. In fact, I would argue it heightens our responsibility to talk about anti-trans legislation, critical race legislation, and these bogus gender definitions and understandings of gender. And I think, I just wanted to do this one last slide. This is part of a global movement, particularly on the gender issue. It's transnationally funded. It is, it's now, you can face the death penalty in Uganda for being homosexual. It's funded by ultra-conservative grantors and donors, religious institutions, and the Christian Broadcasting Network is responsible for almost $1 billion worth of donations in the anti-gender campaign, in the global anti-gender campaign. So you know if they're trying to squash it really hard, that it's really important. And so our responsibility as citizens of this country is not only to defend our right to read, but to defend people's right to read what they want to read. Flies in the face of the emphasis on parental rights around trans issues, right? This idea that people shouldn't be able to decide their own medical care, their own reading material. There are so many ways in which this issue of reading is tied to other larger issues in our country right now. And I think that's the phrase I would end with, our country. We get to decide what rules work for us. And I hope you'll take that seriously and do what you can to disrupt the current narratives. Happy to take questions.
Where do you think this is heading, Sharon? Like in your personal opinion, all of this, all of this strife. I mean,
Well, where is it heading depends on what we do. I think the agenda is a concentration of power. And I mean, women weren't citizens when this country was founded. Indigenous people weren't, certainly enslaved people weren't. And I think that, I don't know that that's where they want to go, but I think it's a concentration of power in the hands of elite, white, hetero-patriarchal, Christian, normative, so I think that that's where it's headed, the concentration and control. And I think we have a lot of tools. We like to think power is top down, and you're seeing, I am so sorry that your generation is seeing this offensive level of top-down power. But power works up from the bottom too. And we have a lot of power in our voices and in our choices. So where it's going is where we decide to take it, in my opinion. Anybody else questions? Okay, thank you very much for your attention.